As before, we're now going to talk about the general equilibrium of this economy. And we start by defining what we mean by the general equilibrium or competitive equilibrium. So remember that in this economy, the consumers are taking income and taxes as given. And so what we have to ensure is that they are making optimal choices of current and future consumption, given that they're taking the real interest rate as beyond their control. The government's choices of current and future spending have to be consistent with the present value budget constraint that the government faces. And then finally, there's a market clearing condition, and that is that the supply of savings has to equal the demand for borrowing, and this ensures that the credit market clears. Now, in this economy, the government is a net borrower and the private sector is a net lender. And therefore, the credit market equilibrium condition comes down to this equation number 4. Private savings has to equal government borrowing. We're going to start with a very simple version of this model where we shut down the government. That should be something kind of familiar to you these days. And by shutting down the government, what we mean is we're going to set all government spending, all taxes, and government borrowing equal to 0. We have a representative consumer, so therefore, in equilibrium, there can be no borrowing or lending. And so what's going to have to happen is the interest rate is going to need to adjust to ensure that consumers are happy with 0 savings. And then we can turn to ask some counterfactual questions about what happens if there's a change in current or future income. Although we're treating those changes as exogenous, you can think of them as being generated by, say, changes in total factor productivity. And so what we're going to have to ask is, how does the demand curve for goods today versus goods tomorrow change? How does the supply curve for goods today versus goods tomorrow change? So fluctuations in current and future income are going to alter what the aggregate quantity of goods available today and in the future will be. Remember that the main thing that consumers are trying to do here is they're trying to smooth their consumption. So if you get fluctuations in current or future income or expected income in the future, then that's going to shift the demand for goods around today versus tomorrow. And that will then generate changes in the equilibrium interest rate. Because there's no net borrowing or saving in this economy, R, the real interest rate, is going to have to adjust so that in equilibrium, savings is equal to 0. And therefore, in equilibrium, consumers are just going to eat their endowments. They're going to just stay at their endowment point. Remember, the endowment point, E, is, because there are no taxes, it's going to be current income and future income. Now, what this means is that because in equilibrium, there really isn't going to be any savings, consumers won't actually be smoothing their consumption. Obviously, they're going to be eating their current or future income. So the real interest rate is going to be doing all the adjusting to supply and demand shifts. Now, this is a very extreme case, but it's designed to help us organize our thinking and to establish our understanding before we move on to more interesting cases.